Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss February 2026 planetary transits, or Gochara, as they're known as in Sanskrit. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this month is bringing ideas into the light. All right, so let's take a look at that. I note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support, and you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. All right, so a few announcements and orientation, especially for those who are new to the channel. Auto dubbing is available on this channel in various languages listed here. The newest ones are Dutch, Polish, and Korean. Also, the big astrological news is eclipses are coming, so in a couple weeks. Always with eclipses, it's expect the unexpected. Now, note I didn't say expect the worst, okay, because that's a different thing. So it might be something you do something unusual, or you say something unusual from your usual pattern. Things occur out of a usual pattern, and again, that might be for the better, or it might be for not so much better. So I have a bunch of videos related to eclipses to help you work with this energy as best as possible. So I have symbolism of Rahu, Ketu, the nodes of the moon, symbolism of sun, symbolism of moon videos. Those are the 4 planets that need to line up to create an eclipse. Also, I do specifically have a lunar solar eclipses or grahan video. I have auspicious timing or muhurta of eclipses, and then mantras for Rahu, Ketu, and eclipses, and mantras for the sun or surya in case you want to start a mantra practice for these planets. All of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on the subject if you'd like to learn more. My channel is all about playlists, so this type of monthly video is in my Gochara Planetary Transits playlist, but I have other playlists as well. And also in these monthly playlists or monthly transit videos, I always go over three famous charts of famous people, places, and moments in time, which I'll be doing today as well. So a lot of my videos actually have famous charts in them, but you won't know from the title. So I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2025, where I list most of the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel, and the videos you can find them in, and then I'll be updating that in a few months, probably April. So we'll catch up and have a 2026 list. But the newest videos I posted, in case you missed any, we have planetary transits for January 2026, birth charts for Jeff Bezos and Amazon, his company, Rohini Nakshatra, or the favorite star, and then full moon or Purnima on 1st of February 2026. And if you're new to all this and want to start building a foundation for yourself or to get more out of talks like this, I've listed some videos at the end of the slide here that I would start with to get a really solid foundation in Vedic astrology. Okay, so here's a list of all the dates when things are moving in the sky in February. So February 1st, full moon in Cancer, Karaka, and Exaltation Nakshatra. I already have a video on this posted, so you can check that out. February 3rd, Mercury moves into Aquarius or Kumbha. February 5th, Venus enters Aquarius. So you can start to see already, like all these planets are moving from Capricorn to Aquarius. That's the big shift going on this month. February 6th, Sun moves into Danishta Nakshatra. Nakshatras are lunar mansions, in case you're not familiar. There are about 27 of them. They all have different energies, and the moon passes through a different one every night. So after 27 nights, you get a lunar month. Okay. Then February 7th, Mercury enters into Shatabhisha Nakshatra. February 9th, Mercury leaves combustion or asta. February 10th, Venus enters Shatabhisha. February 12th, Sun moves into Aquarius, which is a samkranti, or Sun gets destabilized because it's crossing signs. And then Mercury crosses Rahu as well. Then February 14th, Mars enters Dhanishta Nakshatra. February 15th, Mercury moves into Purva Drapada Nakshatra. February 16th, Jupiter has a direct aspect on Mercury, and Venus leaves combustion. February 17th, there's a solar eclipse, or grahan in Aquarius in Dhanishta, and that same day Venus crosses Rahu. February 19th, Sun moves into Shatabhisha Nakshatra. February 21st, Venus enters Purva Nakshatra. February 22nd, Jupiter has a direct aspect on Venus. February 23rd, Mars enters Aquarius. And then February 26th, Mercury goes into retrogression or vakri. February 27th, Sun crosses Rahu. And then the last of the month, 27th through 28th, we're going to have a planetary war between Mercury and Venus. All right. So let's get into the details of what all this means, and we'll go from there. Okay, so on this side, what we have are two charts. One for the 1st of February, the beginning of the month, and the second for February 28th, the end of the month. And these are here to show us visually how things are moving in the sky. They're both oriented to being an Aries or Mesha Lugna. So the Lugna is the rising sign, first house ascendant, all different names of the same thing. In both of these charts, it's that top diamond in the middle. Here where it has the ES, that's ascendant. You'll see in the ascendant that there's a little 1 in the bottom corner. That refers to not the first house, which it is, but the first constellation of the zodiac, which is Aries or Mesha. Okay, so both of these charts are oriented to being Aries or Mesha rising charts. The reason why is when you put the first constellation of the zodiac Aries in the first house, you get what we call a natural zodiac. And a natural zodiac you can kind of use as a birth chart for the whole world, for all of humanity, so collective energy. Okay, so how are things, planet shifting, but also energy shifting over the next month? Well, the moon, starting off with the moon, we have the moon here in its own sign in the 4th house, which sounds pretty good. That'll make the moon strong because moon owns Cancer here. And moon is in a nakshatra or lunar region called Pucha, which is symbolized by a cow's udder. So there's a lot of energy related to nurturing, stabilizing emotionally, physically. And the 4th house relates to home, mother, happiness. So there's a lot of nurturing energy here, but I don't think without issue because you can see Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars are right across from Moon here. And you can see Mercury and Venus are just out of war because they're almost in the same degree here. So they were at each other and destabilized. And Mercury represents the logical mind. Venus represents arts and compassion, diplomacy. And these two are also heading out the door here and heading into Aquarius in the next few days after the 1st of the month. I believe it's the 5th of February. Venus and Mercury will be out of here. And then what you have is you'll have Sun and Mars. Sun and Mars are the two fiery planets, leadership planets. Sun is like a president king. Mars is like a CEO, get in the trenches and roll your sleeves up type of leadership. But once Mercury and Venus roll out of here, you're going to have the two fire planets on the 4th house. So there might be a lot of irritation, anger, frustration going on. Okay. Also, Moon is in its own sign here in the 4th house, but that indicates what we call a karko, meaning that there's problems here with things related to Moon, specifically people related to the Moon, which is mother. Okay, so Moon represents mother, the 4th house represents mother. Excuse me, and when you get those two things together, it actually creates problems instead of is synergistic. So, and the moon represents the emotional mind, the intuitive mind, public, nurturing generally, besides it being in Pusha. So the Dasha period at this time is Saturn, Rahu, Moon. So the Dasha period is a planetary period, and that indicates planets that are, you can think of more active or influential during a given time. And we have Saturn at the top, Saturn, Rahu, Moon. So Saturn is in the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Saturn is a planet representing obstacles, delays, physicality, history, that sort of thing. And Saturn is the lord of the 10th house of day-to-day work as well as reputation. It's also the lord of the 11th house of clubs, groups, society, and income. So there can be physical losses related to work, income, groups, and reputation here. Okay. Then we have Rahu in the 11th house of clubs, group, society, and Rahu is an ambition planet. Okay, but Rahu is in a part of the sky at this moment in time called Shatabhisha. Shatabhisha translates as 100 healers, and so Rahu gives a hidden, unexpected, even though it's ambitious, hidden, unexpected energy. And in Shat to be Sha, it's going to be something that's hidden, unexpected, but hard to, especially in the medical world, diagnose, treat, cure. Okay. So there's some, trouble looming or, under the surface here in the 11th house. And then we have the moon, which we talked about. Now, the other thing is that, these four planets in the 10th house, Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars, they're slowly over the course of the month going to slip into Aquarius. So they're going to line up with Rahu, and Moon is going to zip around and come into the 11th house as well. So on the 17th of February, we're going to have this solar eclipse. So with Rahu and Moon, Saturn can bring sadness, skepticism, doubt, fear, and Rahu and Moon can bring some kind of obsessive compulsive type of energy. Okay, so but it's in the 11th house, which is an enjoyment house. So this might actually be the loss of some kind of ambitious enjoyment, frankly, or something that's hard to how do I say deal with in some way. And I have famous charts that kind of, and the reason why I pull these famous charts is because a lot of them really mimic the current sky pattern so that we can see embodied energies, rather than this all being abstract exercise here. But there's going to be some, losses here in terms of potentially some ambition, some drive, because, well, Sun and Mars, the leadership planets in there as well. But Mercury and Venus are going to be in there with the moon. So there's going to be a lot, almost every planet is going to be involved in this solar eclipse that's happening. And then we have the reflection or aspect of Jupiter into the 11th house as well. So there's some kind of maybe disappointment here related to something that's kind of, how do I say, an obsessive compulsive type of energy. Excuse me. And then those four planets in the 10th house, Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars, those create what we call a pravraja yoga, which is similar to the definition of a stellium in Western astrology. It gives a life focus because you have all these planets in one house. They draw the energy of the houses that they own into that house. So basically, you're compiling all your energy in that one place. And we also have a Parvata yoga here. So the Parvata yoga is the ruling planet for the whole chart, which is Mars, because Mars owns or rules Aries. And Mars is strong. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So we have a very strong ruling planet here. And Parvata yogas in general, yoga just means a combination, but you can get different combinations in astrology. Usually they're planetary combinations. But what these yogas give, they give meta effects, super effects in a chart. So it goes beyond planet analysis and house analysis and that kind of thing. So with having such a strong Lagnatia ruling planet, that gives strength to the whole chart. But specifically, Parvata Yoga specifically gives like a leaders type of energy. And then also this Mars creates a Ruchika yoga, so which is a Pancha Maha Purush yoga. A Pancha Maha Purush yoga, that's we call it the five great beings, but what that can give is a very like strong and powerful Mars. Mars again is a CEO type, a leadership type. It can be a military type as well, because Mars can indicate action and military or violence, that kind of thing. So there's a very strong physical leadership focus here. And it's in Capricorn, which is a movable earth sign. So there's a lot of building here of some kind and maybe reputation. The other thing is that not only does Moon, Swa in the fourth house of happiness and home, and it's got Karko Bhavanasha, so that brings issues, but Moon also has Digbala, directional strength, by being in the fourth house. And likewise, Mars and Sun also have Digbala. So we have this sort of duality, contrast, but potentially integration of nurturing the home and self and increasing happiness and stabilizing that versus really going gangbusters in terms of some sort of work reputation here related to leadership. And of these four planets in the fourth house, the only one you can see at this is the sun, because Mercury, Venus, and Mars are combos, meaning they're so close to the sun you can't see them in the sky with your eyes anymore. So you can't see all this, the underpinnings here of the Mercury, Venus, Mars. Okay, Mercury, again, the logical mind, Venus, arts, creativity, Mars is action. So there's some sort of activity here, um, leadership activity that's got a lot of things going underneath the surface that's yet to be revealed. And as all these planets move into Aquarius, it's going to be revealed because slowly, I read on that list of dates when things are moving in the sky, Mercury's going to come out of combustion, then Venus is going to come out of combustion during the month of February, and then Mars will come out of combustion in March. So whatever is being worked on prolifically here is going to be revealed, and it's going to be something apparently quite unusual. Okay, especially because we have the eclipses involved. Okay, so again, there's a tension between again a drive to build a solid future forward, and sorting through what nurtures emotional comfort and happiness. Those two things may be, again, contrasting here or not integrated here. Okay. And then let's see. And then the other thing is all this building in the 10th house. The 10th house is artistana. So it's arta is a tangible wealth. So there's all this action activity towards building tangible wealth related to 9 to 5 work and reputation. But then, then the question is with this very strong exaggerated moon, is this making somebody happy? It's to be decided, okay? The other thing is the moon, which we're running here, is in the fourth house, which is a mokshasthana, a house of freedom. So this might be an attempt to build wealth to create more freedom, but is it? I'm not really sure here. Okay, I think it's yet to be revealed because again, these planets there's a lot going on under the surface, including some struggles here because we have that war between Mercury and Venus that just happened, and we're going to have another one at the end of the month. Okay, when Mercury starts going retrograde, Mercury's going to back up into Venus again. So this isn't over. Yeah, and the other thing is when that Mercury and Venus planetary war happens at the end of the month, they're going to be at the very end of Aquarius in a nakshatra called Purva, which is symbolized by a funeral pyre. Okay, so again, it looks like, and you'll see like in the second chart, all these planets lining up in the 11th house. So whatever is being worked on here, in the drive to develop something related to work and reputation, it's going to be brought into the light, okay, into these groups. That's the 11th house. Some unusual things are going to happen, and then it might be kind of like going back to the drawing board type of thing. It may not take off as well as one had hoped. Okay. So in the second chart, what do we have here? So Moon is in Pusha again. So again, that's kind of nice because Moon's the same, basically in the same, more or less the same position. So we can keep that steady. The dasha period, though, is changing a bit. So instead of Saturn, Rahu, Moon, we have Saturn, Venus, Moon. Okay, so again, Saturn and Moon are the same. But Venus, instead of Rahu being this kind of ambitious, um, hidden, unusual, slippery energy. I mean, literally, Rahu and Ketu can be symbolized by a snake. Rahu's the head of the snake, and Ketu's the tail of the snake. We have Venus here. So Venus and Moon together is going to bring more of an arts and aesthetics type of energy. Okay. And Venus, again, in the second chart, you can see it's in the same degree as Mercury and Purvadabara. There's some dramatic shift in things related to Venus, okay? Venus represents the arts, it represents diplomacy, it represents social grace, and this is in the 11th house of clubs, group, society. So this might be a loss of social grace. Also, Venus represents the practical advisor. It represents luxuries, finer things of life. And Venus in war with Mercury, this is like head versus heart. It's like, is this really, it's not going to be a seamless, there might be some things that, again, whatever is being developed in the 10th house in the beginning of the month gets presented to, it starts proliferating into clubs and groups by the end of the month. And then some unexpected events. The sun's going to be eclipsed here. There's going to be a loss of leadership. Let me see. I'm just trying to think of the timing here. Almost exactly the same time that the sun is eclipsed, Venus is going to come out of combustion. So we're going to start to see Venus, Mercury, but Mars is still not there. So Mars is, again, a competitive, rebellious planet, and that's kind of hidden underneath the surface here. The other thing is that Sun, Rahu, Mars, those are three malefic planets. And so you might get this like real strong drive to develop things, and proliferate things through your network, that kind of thing. But there's going to be something that happens that makes you rethink things. And also relationships may not go over well with everybody because, again, Venus also represents relationships, including loved ones. And especially in an Aries rising chart, Venus is even more important for assessing the 7th house of partnerships, whether personal or professional, because Venus is the lord of the 7th house, which indicates those things. And also path forward. So this might kind of be like a false start type of energy. And there might be, even though there's a drive forward to, again, share or proliferate out this new perspective or whatever it's being worked on here, there might be I guess you could say collateral damage here in terms of it's going to be controversial and there might be a falling out with people and that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, and then Mars also at that time, at the end of the month, is going to be in Dhanishta. So Mars and Dhanishta, the star of Dhanishta is Mars. So Mars is going to be strong in Aquarius because it's in Dhanishta. But Mars again is active. Can be military violence, initiative, rebellious type planet, and it's in Dhanishta, which is symbolized by a drum. So it could be potentially, music like percussion instrument, but with these sorts of energies, Rahu and Sun are going to be in Shatru. This could be like, again, especially some sort of fallout with leadership here in terms of a ambitious leadership with hidden, like a kind of a hidden agenda. There might be some initial thoughts that this is like a happy kind of, how would I say, like almost celebratory. This could be something that initially celebrated, but it looks like things are going to fall apart towards the end of the month here. Okay, once these planets start, going from Dhanishta, which is establishing a rhythm of things, right, creating order here, to slowly moving to Shatru, things that are difficult to heal and improve, and then they're on the funeral pyre. You see how that goes? So there might be something like that that seems like it's going to be a big happy time, but it's going to be, there's going to be sadness here. Venus and Moon are not only aesthetics, but they're emotional planets, and Saturn again is sadness, skepticism, doubt, fear, that kind of thing. So the pravraja yoga, the focus shifts from 10th house matters, day-to-day work and reputation, to 11th house matters of clubs, group, society, also potentially risks and gambling. And also the 11th house is enjoyment. So, working, and then again, trying to bring this thing into the light. and then it all kind of falls apart. Actually, I think this reminds me, I think it was last year, right, when Trump was inaugurated, and who was it? Some famous country music star. I think it was Carrie Underwood. She was supposed to sing, or she did sing at his inauguration event, which everybody was like really like, woohoo, that's like the best. Everybody's excited about that. And then I think there was like a mic problem or something like that. And it all just kind of fell apart and her voice cracked. And it was, people were like, oh, it wasn't nearly as awesome as everybody was expecting it to be because these weird, technical issues. This could be technical issues as well because Rahu's there with Mars and Mercury. Mercury and Mars together can bring like computer energy, and Rahu can bring like internet or technology as well. So there might be some sort of like technology uh, problem that's hard to deal with, in terms of managing it. Um, so yeah, so we'll see what that's all about. Again, we won't know for sure because this is all unexpected, right? There's Rahu's in the middle of all this, so who knows exactly? And it's going to be something like you never. Again, the eclipses, they bring this kind of energy where like things you never kind of imagined happen. And again, sometimes I think the nice part about eclipses, I mean, you can't really plan anything around them, but the nice thing about eclipses is they make you realize where you have assumptions, like whether they're positive assumptions or negative assumptions. It kind of turns all that on its head. So it kind of wakes up your mind a little bit. And this is all happening in Aquarius, which is fixed air sign, so fixed ideas. So there's going to be some shakeup here. So head versus heart, newfound perspective proliferating out into friend community groups, again, online or internet. So there might be something going on along those lines. And again, all these planets are also, not all of them, but Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all aspecting the fifth house here. The fifth house relates to creativity, relates to children, it relates to stages. So it looks like there's going to be some, again, on stage thing, kind of like that Carrie Underwood, uh, you know, um, technical problem last year at the U.S. presidential inauguration. Um, so there's some taking risks here. There's a group thought leader here. Again, this is about getting out of the comfort zone and old track and run and wheel. With some new words and actions and routines being developed here. Because this Mercury that's going retrograde, again, when we have a retrogression, planets are stronger, but usually it's about going back and reviewing. And Mercury retrograde, Mercury represents ideas, thoughts, plans, that sort of thing. So Mercury going retrograde is going to be reviewing the plans here. And again, you can see Venus is just out the door. So we're going to have Sun, Rahu, Mercury, and Mars in Aquarius by themselves for a good, week to 10 days, almost 2 weeks there. Sun is halfway there, so maybe a week and a half, 10 days. And Mercury is the lord of the sixth house of routines. It's also the lord of the third house of neighbors and siblings here. Mercury is a pure temporal malefic because it's the lord of two negative houses here. So this might be, and the sixth house also represents enemies. This could also be like neighbors or siblings who are getting into fights here, and bringing down this leadership, initiative. And then the fifth house opposite, is Leo is in the fifth house, and Leo represents a high level, authority, and Sun is going to be aspecting there. So there's going to be strength there. The other thing that's going on is that because Sun is aspecting Ketu's aspect from the fifth house are going to aspect it 5 and 9 houses away. So right at the top of the chart. And Ketu is, again, the south node of the moon. It's the tail of the snake. Ketu represents separations, explosive, hidden, unexpected energy. And you have the two fire planets, Sun and Mars, directly opposing it. So there's going to be some sort of, explosive action here where people don't know what to do or say or how to deal with it in a diplomatic way. And hopefully that's not literal, okay? But yeah, but it looks like again there's some major shakeup going on here. Um, and again, this is all about whatever work has been developed here is coming out to light, but again, may not fly or go as well as people had hoped or expected. Okay, so on this slide, just talking about the moon transit specifically. So again, I do separate videos on the new and full moon eclipses. So the full moon we just had, February 1st, Cancer, Karaka, and Exaltation Nakshatra. That video's already been posted, so you can check that out. But essentially, we had a swa full moon because in its own sign, aspecting Sun with a combust. Um, uh, oh, the Sun was bhavat bhavam. Bhavat bhavam. In that chart, the Sun is the lord of the seventh house, and it's gone 7 houses away. So it's gonna be like one relationship after another. In Shravana Nakshatra, so there's this like storytelling element of leading, leading and history. Also, there's a Kambas Bhavam Karkabama Nashavina, so trouble with relationships. And then Mercury was there, and they just came out of war. Um, so, and again, Danishta is in like establishing relationships or establishing order, again, in a rhythm again. So really, it seemed like that moment in time was an emotional alert because the moon was really strong about it time being the time to rewrite your story. And also, I talked about like the concept of emptiness there, which is a yoga concept about how we don't always realize, but we assign a lot of meaning to things when things really don't have an inherent meaning necessarily. So anyway, I get into that in that talk if you want to check that out. Then on 17th of February, I guess that's the big event, we have a solar eclipse or surya grahan happening in Aquarius and Kumbha and Dhanishta. So again, Dhanishta is a drumbeat, right? And especially with all these planets going through and then Mars being there. Will Mars be there on the 17th? I forget. Sun has just passed through there. So this again might be some kind of a military or uh, type of activity here. But there's some attempt to establish some kind of rhythm, okay, an organization. But Sun and Moon will both be in Dhanishta. So Sun again is leadership, especially a king, president, that sort of thing. Moon is there, so that's the public. So you won't see either of those. And then Rahu's going to be there, and Venus will be in Shatabisha, that difficult to heal energy, those two together. And then Mercury will be in Purva, so there might be some thoughts, actions, thoughts or words or plans that are destructive in nature. Because again, they're on the Purva, that funeral pyre energy. Also, we'll have the aspect of a retrograde Jupiter and Punarvasu. That's kind of, I think, mixed energy there because Jupiter is a great benefic, but Punarvasu symbolized by a quiver of arrows. So we have a weapon now involved in this energy here. So Jupiter might take the edge off of what's brewing here in Aquarius, but with Jupiter and Mars, this could be legal. So this could be like a leader who uh, doesn't abide by legal boundaries. Okay. The other thing about the solar eclipse is that we have a Sudarshan Lugna coming up. So all of this, the Lugna rising sign for this solar eclipse is going to be Aquarius. So all these planets right at the top. And Sudarshan Lugna, meaning the sun and the moon and the rising sign are all lined up here, are all the same. And what that does is it aligns the body, mind, and soul. So even more than a pravraja yoga, it's like everything you got is going in one direction. Because the rising sign indicates body, and the moon represents mind, and the sun represents soul. So, with all that going on, there's going to be some kind of challenging creative reinvention of self. Seems like the general energy of that is going to be. But again, I'm going to have a full video on that, so you can check that out later on. Okay, so I just wanted to mention, I didn't have it on the slide before, I had to add it in, but on the February 1st full moon, we have the sun with the combust of Mars, and both the sun and Mars are in Shravana. So this is about creating story related to leadership. Yeah, so just wanted to add that in before I forgot. So then let's look at Venus, Shukra in Sanskrit. So this might be interesting to a lot of you because Valentine's Day is coming up and Venus represents love and romance. So February 5th, Venus enters Aquarius. So Aquarius is a fixed air sign. So this could be, art that's really, how do I say, it's engages the mind. This could be a relationship along those same lines as well. But again, Aquarius is more of almost like a NASA scientist type of energy, you know. So, ideas that are really interesting, creative, and you know, unusual, especially because Rahu is there, and Mercury's going to be there as well. Luckily, this is a friend sign for Venus, so it'll be fairly strong here. But this could be, long-term notions of love overturned here. Because again, it seems like it's starting off pretty well because Venus will be when it enters Aquarius, it'll be in Danishta, so creating a rhythm. So this could be some kind of relationship where things seem like they're getting into a kind of rhythm and there's going to be a draw there. There's going to be almost like maybe even potentially like an obsessive energy there because Rahu's there and Rahu can bring that kind of energy. But Rahu also indicates things like, internet and technology, especially being an air sign. This might be potentially somebody who, you meet online or in online groups because Aquarius is the house of the natural, is the natural 11th house of clubs, group society. Um, and Mercury is there, so again, there's even more of this like, thinking and processing energy there. So when you get this Venus, Rahu, Mercury combination Aquarius, this could be like a meeting of the minds, maybe even like a sapiosexual type of energy. People who really get attracted to people through the things that they think in their mind. That's kind of the entry point or connecting with somebody. Again, this could be an online relationship as well. This will also potentially be somebody quite different than yourself. Because Venus and Rahu together brings an energy of somebody being quite different in could be any area of life. Could be background, could be country, could be language, could be religion, could be race, could be financial status, could be medical status. Um, yeah, so that might be happening. There might be some generation of that starting off the month. Then the thing is, pretty quickly that starts to descend to chaos because Venus will enter Shah. So this might be difficulties in that relationship that are hard to ameliorate. Also, this is going to become more abstract because the symbol of Shah is like a circle. It's not like a cow. It's not a quiver of arrows. It's not a tangible thing. So it's going to be very abstract and it's kind of sticky. Okay. And then the other thing is, again, Venus is combust, so you can't see Venus. And we've been in a Venus combustion for a few months now. When Venus goes combust, I mentioned, usually things go haywire because Venus is the planet of love and romance and social grace and that sort of thing. So when Venus goes combust, people are much more sharp and edgy. I usually joke like it's a really bad time to get customer service. Even the customer service people are on edge because they kind of lose their grace. Um, but also, Venus represents compassion. So, and the finer things of life, like all the goody, nice things and art and stuff like that. So, um, you may not have been seeing the love, maybe feeling it because Venus will be more strong internally. So, it might be a good time when Venus is combust to generate creative ideas, but there won't be expression because, again, when a planet is combust, you can't see it with your eyes, so there's no physical manifestation typically. Um, so, yeah, so this will be potentially something this Rahu, Venus, Mercury mix will be like a relationship that's not very grounded or well defined, like a situationship. This could also potentially be in a better sense. It could be like a love doctor, like maybe a relationship counselor or something like that. Because Venus, shot to be shot 100 healers. This could be somebody that, heals things that most people can't, like maybe an unusual specialist who has a special insight that can, crack the code here for relationships. But again, by the end of the month, Venus and Mercury are going to be in war. Venus is going to pass through that funeral pyre energy, and Mercury's going to back up and rethink things. So just be a little bit cautious. As I mentioned, you can find very intriguing, compelling people during eclipse periods, but you can also get yourself stuck on a roller coaster when you find relationships during this time. It can kind of go either way. Usually there's a very strong, especially when Venus is in the middle of a eclipse, you can get very strong, almost obsessive compulsive energy. But with Venus being combust, it may not manifest. It might just stay like a 5D ethereal type of, almost non-physical entity experience rather than a physical one. It can get a little bit strange. But that's the energy of Rahu, and that's the energy of eclipses. Finally, after Valentine's Day, Venus will leave combustion and it'll become visible again. So this is when you might actually start seeing, more good, sweet things coming into your life. Tangible manifestations of love, romance, art, compassion, kindness, practical advice, all these things that Venus represents. Vehicles, pets. So this is sort of like, once Venus comes back, you'll start to see more pink ponies and unicorns. Maybe not literally, but yeah, things will usually be more well adjusted socially. Um, at least in the outer manifestation. Again, still Venus is going to be in the shatru energy, right? So still difficult to deal with, and then it's going to move into the funeral pyre energy. And then I believe it's March 1st, Venus will move into Pisces, its exaltation sign, which will give strength to Venus, but first part of Pisces is also this Purva energy, funeral pyre energy. So still smoke and flames and transformation going on. And then through March, Venus will start to move into better energy. So unfortunately, February might be a wild and wacky time for love and relationships. So February 17th, Venus crosses Rahu. This can be an unusual turn of events related to the above. So again, if there was like a relatively new relationship that was starting at the beginning of the month, that might have seemed really compelling, all of a sudden it might just all go haywire. And this February 17th, this is the time of the solar eclipse when you have all these this might be like a sudden falling out. It's just nobody saw coming. And I have mentioned before in previous years when Venus crossed Rahu, like one year I literally had a snake fall on my head. I went to the garage. So Venus represents vehicles. So I went to the garage where I housed my vehicle to get my car out. And I lifted the garage door, and literally a snake fell in front of my eyes, almost on my face, and like right at my feet. And luckily it was like a small snake, but even the small snakes that I know logically aren't harmful, like they still freak me out. And then of course I'm not expecting like a snake to fall, and literally it almost brushed my eyelashes. It was that close. Rahu represents snakes, is symbolized by snakes. So I just thought, wow, if I wasn't an astrologer, I would think this is completely random. But as an astrologer, Venus crossing Rahu, I'm like, oh, this makes total sense that this happened today. This snake fell in front of my face as I'm going to my car. Okay. But again, also, Venus, Mercury, Mars, having been in combustion, even though Venus just left combustion and Mercury's coming out of combustion, there was a lot of not knowing what to say or how to express thoughts and feelings going on. and how to act on the thoughts and feelings. Like there's this churning going on, especially during January of thoughts, feelings, actions. That's, Venus, Mercury, Mars combos. And then February 21st, Venus enters Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Again, that's the funeral pyre energy, transformation and endings related to all things Venus, which I've listed above. And then 22nd of February, that might be a little bit of a lift because Jupiter, the great benefic, is, aspecting Venus. So that can bring some spiritualizing energy, grace energy, but Jupiter is in that Punarvasu arrow energy, so there's going to be cycling here. So I don't know if Jupiter is going to be enough to really completely ameliorate all that's going on in Aquarius. I mean, luckily it's there; it should have some benefit, but this might just be more exaggeration of the mental emotional cycles going on here. That's a possibility as well. So, um, and then at the end of the month, Mercury, Venus, planetary war, graha yuddha. So new perspectives and ideas on what to do, say, think, plan, and love. Head versus heart, but also I would say confusion as well. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit wacky for love this month. Okay, so here we have our first famous chart. And again, this is very similar to the current sky pattern. And so talking about, strange, unusual art and relationships. This is, this is the sun chart for the movie premiere of King Kong. Okay, and this happened March 2nd, 1933 in New York City, USA. I don't have a birth time here, so I use the sun chart. But you can see at the top here, we have an Aquarius rising. And Venus is there, and Rahu is there, and Sun is there. And because Rahu and Sun are so close together, a few degrees apart, we can tell that we're moving out of a solar eclipse when this happened. Okay, when the movie premiere came out. And then we also have the influence of Jupiter and Mars aspecting the Lagna, and we have Venus and Sun aspecting the seventh house of Leo. So that looks pretty close, right? I mean, we have Venus, Rahu, Sun, Mars, Jupiter on Aquarius, which is pretty close. So we're missing Mercury, and I don't know if a few days before, because Mercury just slipped out of Aquarius. But yeah, Mercury and Moon were recently in Aquarius, so like maybe a week before then. Yeah, about a week. Maybe 5 to 7 days before this. When was the eclipse? Did I write it down? The eclipse was on, this is March. The eclipse was on February 24th. So for six days, yeah, about a week before this, maybe Mercury, Moon was in Aquarius and maybe Mercury as well. So almost exactly the same. But, again, 1933. So especially at that time, King Kong was like a bizarre notion, but also people were obsessed with it. So, it sold out and there was a long line. So the Sun Nakshatra in this chart, we have Shatabisha. So again, a difficult leadership that's hard to, deal with, or a fight that's hard to deal with, or a leader that's difficult to fight. I would say that because we have Mars on here too, which maybe whoever was fighting King Kong, but I think this was actually King Kong himself. um, yeah, and then the Sun Moon Nakshatra was in Kritika most of the day after 5:20 a.m. And I know I couldn't find an exact time. This was held at Radio City Music Hall in New York City. I couldn't find a playbill or anything else that listed the exact time, but there were some other playbills around that time, and I think the first movie, King Kong movie, was at 10, and the last one was at 6. So midday. So Moon was in Kritika after 4:20, and Kritika is related to a hero, like a shining hero type of character, but also riding as well. But the Moon, you can see, is crossing from even though it's in Kritika all day, it's crossing from Aries to Taurus. Okay, so and so the moon was unstable, but at least in Critica. So moon represents imagination. And again, this is about fighting and nurturing energy from Critica. The day lord was Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Kamasthana, so house of enjoyment, and with Mars and Saturn, or sorry, Mars and Sun and Venus and Ketu. So there's this kind of explosive fight of authority, also related to love, okay? Because King Kong was sort of in love or attracted to, at least desired, the blonde female lead in the movie, right? So it was a little bit of a love story as well. So I'm sure this like blew people's minds, when at the time, and that's the kind of thing. Like this kind of thing might be coming out here for us in the not too distant future. So there's some sort of unusual enjoyment here because Jupiter's also aspecting not only the first house but the third and the 11th, which are the 3, 7, 11 houses are all enjoyment houses. So all this like big screen fighting love stuff was enjoyable. Then the birth dasha, we have Sun, 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 Rahu. So that brings us to the Lugna again. So again, an unusual, ambitious king. And again, king, I think that's King Kong. That would be an unusual king, right? And then how does this recreate this current sky pattern? Well, an eclipse, and I think that year the eclipses came in like sets of 3 instead of 2. So that was also even more unusual, but there was eclipses on February 24th and March 12th. So right in the middle of that is when this movie premiere came out. Also, in this chart, Venus is moving into combustion. So instead of moving out of combustion, but Venus is on some level combust. I mean, whether it just came out or just goes in, there's still some energy related to Venus combustion. So like the unattainable obsessive love, is what we're seeing here. And Venus is art and Rahu's technology, and Rahu can represent like film. So this is like a creative film related to a leader that's hard to manage. He's climbing on like the Empire State Building and swatting at planes. And then this is all happening in Aquarius. So this is like, blowing people's minds. This is a very, fixed idea, but like again, there's some initiative going on here. Yeah. So yeah. So what else do we have here? Yeah. So anyway, the Lugna is Aquarius and Kumbha, fixed air sign, Shtiravayu, Venus and Dhanishta. Dhanishta again can symbolize a drum, and Venus and Dhanishta can symbolize music. And the musical score of this movie was kind of a big deal. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time. And then Rahu and Sun are in Shatavisha, so some ambitious leader who's difficult to manage. And then aspected by Jupiter and Mars and Purva Falguni. So this is another level of enjoyment. Purva Falguni is about the finer things of life. And then the thing is that we have 2 pravraja yogas here. So we have the first house of self and then the 7th house of partnerships. So again, that's another indication this is about relationships. Like, and the movie symbolically, I think, historically has been known to exemplify the relationship between modern times and nature and man and beast and that sort of man and other animals. That's difficult to ameliorate. Yeah. So unusual art or film, obsessive fight. An adventure story here. I mean, you have Sun and Mars here with Rahu. There's going to be an adventure story. It's also going to be a love story. Uh, and then music is going to be involved. And then in this chart also, there's a Kala Sarpa yoga. So almost all the planets are on one side of the Rahu Ketu axis or another. That gives a more ambition and unusual energy. And apparently the director here was kind of obsessed about this whole thing. He dumped a bunch of his own money into whatever costs were needed to create this movie because money kept running out because there were so many special effects and they had to. Part of the reason why this movie is still thought to be like some film critic or somebody decided in 2010 that this is the greatest horror film of all time. And it's still, I think, on the list of like even Rotten Tomatoes for like the top 50 films of all time because it was so innovative and so wild, like wildly imaginative. Um, especially for that time that and then all the special effects like they when I was reading about it, apparently King Kong, they specifically chose not to use like a person in a monkey suit to play King Kong. It was all these models and stuff. So that was like a big deal. That was a lot of technology, especially at that time. So anyway, strange, unusual, obsessions here. We do have a Papakartra yoga here because Saturn and Mercury on either side of the Lugna, so that creates like problems. And there were problems. There was a lot of censorship that happened. They had to cut out a lot of scenes because they were too, frankly, risque or offensive to people. Because there are other, symbolisms associated with this movie that are not pleasant, such as racism and that sort of thing. So, it was a mixed bag. Kind of like what I was talking about with all these planets lining up in the 11th house of the natural zodiac. This is going to be something that was really worked on, brought to the public, and it's going to be like again blow people's minds, but it may not entirely be well received. Even though it'd be kind of obsessive, so it might be this almost like weird, trend that happens that's sort of like a car crash, the rubbernecking people do, where it's like it's not pleasant or happy, but people still can't look away. It's, um, so anyway, yeah, so that's just there you go. There's the gestalt of the chart, but let's go through the other houses quickly. So the second house, the Lord is a debilitated, wait a minute here. The Lord is Venus, actually. I have to fix that. The Lord is Venus we have a debilitated Mercury here, Uttar Bhadrapada, which is the back legs of the funeral pyre. So this is like bringing order to chaos. And then we have an aspect by Mars and Saturn. So this is manufactured sound and speech. Mercury can represent sound and speech, and the second house is the house of speech. Yeah, but I think this is also editing and censoring here. And it could be potentially destructive speech. Yeah, I think the other thing is that, sort of in the social context at this time, 1933, that's when the Great Depression was happening in the United States. And right, I think a couple days after this, FDR called for a 4-day bank holiday because there was a run on the banks because the stock market, crashed and he was trying to avoid a financial collapse of the country. And that happened about the same time as all this. So people were really desperate and I think happy to have some, you know, big distraction to think about and talk about besides all the financial stuff going around. So then the third house here, the Lord is Mars, maybe Moon is there, but you get an aspect from a retrograde Jupiter. So this is going to be a pioneering public publication, you know, uh, going out here. This could also be pioneering voice and speech. I mean, I don't know where all that stood at 1933, but I think all that voice and speech and sound stuff was pretty new for movies. Then the fourth house here, the Lord is Venus. We have an exalted, potentially Karkobhava Nasha moon. It was the exalted Karkobhava Nasha moon at some point during the day. I just don't know exactly when. Because this time, I mean, even though I altered the chart here, I spun the chart, this is set for noon. So right at noon, which is when somebody would have been watching this movie, is when Moon slipped into a stronger position. And the fourth house here, this is like a past public fighting hero, you know. Uh, and again, I think this is how do I say? kind of like bringing people some happiness and sight and muster, um, and happiness, through imagination. This heroic imagination. So, yeah. And then the fifth house here, fifth house lord is Mercury. This is advice about speech and investments. I think this is I don't think everything went to plan, kind of like what I mentioned now, this month for us, but it was still, you know, successful enough. Then the sixth house here, sixth house lord is Moon, um, aspected by Saturn, so some physical issues, employee issues, difficulties here. They had to do all these the people working on this film had to do all this weird stuff because of the way that they filmed it and the special effects and having to make things up as they went along. And then I think dealing with the shooting schedule, like the people who worked on the film really, I think, suffered, frankly. Um, but it is what it is. They still made this, like, still round movie almost 100 years later. Then at least the story is still renowned, right? Even if the movie isn't. So then the seventh house lord is Sun. It aspects its own. So this is going to be very strong leadership partners. Mars and K2 aspect by Venus. So like a creative fake fight going on here. Strange and unruly lead character versus leader of explosions and airplanes. The reason why, um, Jupiter represents the sky. And Mars represents machines. K2 represents technology. And Sun again represents authority and leadership. And Mars. So when you get Jupiter and Mars together, you can get law, but you can also get like flying machines, sky machines, flying machines, so airplanes. So this is like literally this tension here is like the top is like King Kong, and then the bottom is like the authority with planes, trying to shoot him down from the Empire State Building, which they ended up doing, right? I mean, I think he fell to the ground and got killed. You could see all this tension on the 1-7 axis here. But this is also creative partners. So apparently the makers of the film, maybe the producers of the film, uh, really were high level, top notch people to actually make this all happen. Because it just sounded like it was a crazy, like wild endeavor, kind of obsessive endeavor. I mean, the amount of money the director personally dumped into the movie was just astounding. I don't remember the amount, but it was like, wow, this guy. This guy either really believed in this or just really was pretty obsessed. Either way. The other thing is that, see, Jupiter is aspecting its own sign in the 11th house, and the 11th house can represent risk taking and gambling. So definitely this is a big gamble. And then also another house of gambling is the 8th house, which is Virgo, and Mercury is aspecting the 8th house here. So we have two very strong, risk taking gambling houses lit up here in this chart. Okay, so, well, we're on the 8th house. The 8th house is also other people's money and an alternative mindset and like organizing things in a tangible way because it's Virgo here. Um, and bringing order to chaos. Like, it just seems like the advice here from the 5th house, it's like they were making it up and confused at many points and, making this up, but they still had some sort of conviction to follow this through. Then the 9th house here, the Lord is Venus, and um, aspected by an exalted Saturn. So this is going to be a long-lived storytelling organization. So I think this setup, whatever this crew was, probably set them up for life, uh, or they were already established, some sort of established. And that was the thing is there was some weird story. Again, another weird story that the director of this film made a previous film that I think sort of got lost in history. And it's, I mean, almost offensive to talk about, but it was shot in Africa, and it was something about, you know, humans and animals interacting sexually, and I don't know, it was some weird thing. But it actually was a big hit. So I don't know, it almost sounded pornographic to me. I don't know if it was, um, but since it was a big hit, they're like, oh wow, like this whole thing about relationships and animals in like kind of a provocative way is like a big money. It's like a big money hit thing, So basically, King Kong was sort of like in some ways, a derivation of that, which is like very strange. But that adds to the strangeness of this whole. And that's the thing too, is Venus can be pet. So this is like an unusual, leading pet. You could see it that way as well. Who's in love with this blonde lead character, or attracted to her, desiring her, wants to her up and carry her around like a doll. Um, yes, it was very strange. I was like, wow, that's not too surprising given this kind of chart that there's like this whole backstory. Very strange backstory to the actual production of, final production of this movie. But anyway, let's see. Ninth house here. Yeah. So then the tenth house lord is Mars, aspects his own house. So very strong, showing here. And Mars is in its own sign. So it's a very strong showing here. This is going to be like rebellious and wild and active, and maybe even disturbing a little bit, because it's with K2. And it did disturb some people. I mean, some of the scenes were, again, too risque, or because I think the King Kong like tore her clothes off. And I think they might have taken that scene out and then put it back in later on, like in following years or something like that. Like all these scenes, like really had to pass through because it was such a wild, imaginative thing. Just having this almost big monkey-like monster creature climbing on, skyscrapers in New York. I'm sure that was already like wild, but then the relationship, aspect, I don't know, it was more than most people could handle, I guess. So they did a lot of editing. Besides just the sound and voice, like the scenes and stuff, they took a lot of stuff out apparently. Because it was too disturbing. Then the 11th house here, 11th house lord, Jupiter aspect his own sign. So that's going to be big income and money. So two of the money houses, the 8th house, other people's money, and the 11th house of income, very, very strong. So they got their investments and they made a lot of money off of it. Also, the 11th house is clubs, group, society. So this was enjoyment for people, big enjoyment, and a big thing to talk about. Then the 12th house here, 12th house lord was a Swa, Saturn, and Shravana. So Saturn is history, and the 12th house is expenditures, but also like overseas global. This is like a long lasting story that traveled globally. I mean, I'm talking about King Kong. I mean, most of you know about King Kong, right? Even if you haven't seen this movie. So scenes were definitely deleted. This movie did get rave reviews. It's still considered to be one of the greatest horror films of all time. And the sort of theme or storyline here is beauty killed the beast. Because what happens was this guy is, you know, King Kong is on the skyscraper and he's holding the blonde character, and then the planes are going around trying to shoot at him, and he starts swatting at the planes, and then he, I guess, slips or something, and then falls down to the ground. And all because he's like hanging on to this like blonde lead character. So a lot of amazing special effects that had never been done before, and again, in a way, socially, this is probably a welcome distraction and a way to process a lot of the chaos, and also give hope that even some behemoth, King Kong monster character could be taken down. I mean, not so great for the nature side of things, but since he was drawn off of a remote island into urban setting and wasn't really evolved for that kind of situation, but man could overcome beast. So I guess at that point, that was helpful or hopeful to people. But yeah, so there you go. I was like, I knew some really wild charts were going to be coming through this month, and here you go. Here's one of them. So enjoy that one. Okay, so this is Mercury during the month of February. So February 3rd, Mercury moves into Aquarius, again going into that, fixed ideas constellation. February 7th, Mercury moves into Shatru, so abstractions and challenges to Mercury-related things, logic and decisions and planning. February 9th, Mercury leaves combustion or asta, so all this internal decision-making and planning is going to become external and like communications and things like that. So this might be like when somebody starts talking about all this stuff that's been churning in them for a while. Then February 12th, Mercury crosses Rahu, some sort of unusual ambition related to these things. February 15th, Mercury moves into Purvadropana Nakshatra. So again, that's that funeral pyre energy. There's going to be some pretty serious end or transformation going on here related to Mercury-related things. Then February 16th, Jupiter has a direct aspect on Mercury. So this might be like news or publishing or communication, education. So this might be like the marketing and kind of what is it, spreading the news and, getting, why is the word not coming to me? Generating some buzz, public buzz related to whatever this project is. February 26th, Mercury goes retrograde. So again, rethinking, revising, whatever was just all this energy was spent developing something, but it may not go as well as planned and it needs to be revised. And again, 3 planets combust part or all of the month. So that's going to be a lot of confusion. Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Mercury, what to think, what to say, how to feel, what to do. And then revising all that. And again, Mercury and Venus in planetary war at the end of the month. So head versus heart, in terms of deciding what to do after the presentation of all this. All right, so here's the second famous chart. And you can see Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter are in Aquarius in the 9th house. We also have Jupiter aspecting there from the 5th house, and we have Rahu aspecting from the 1st house, and we also have a Parivartan exchange of houses between Saturn and Mercury. So in this chart, we have Mercury, Venus, Sun, Rahu, Saturn, Jupiter. So instead of Mars, swap out Saturn, essentially. Okay. So what is this chart? Well, this is ENIAC Day, the first public computer demonstration that was had. This happened February 15th, 1946, 14:15 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States. This is at the University of Pennsylvania specifically. So this is the first basically public demonstration of a general computer. Okay, now notice the date here, 1946. I mean, this is right after World War II. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through here. But we've got some really wild stuff going on in this chart as well, which is not surprising. We don't have an eclipse, but we do have the aspect of Rahu on the 5th house and 9th house. And Rahu is in all the air signs, so all the thought signs, all the idea signs. So unusual, ambitious, unexpected energy related to thoughts and ideas. Okay. So the Lagna nakshatra is in Punarvasu. So again, that arrow and quiver energy. So cycling, going back and forth, cycling. Sun is in the nakshatra Dhanishta, so trying to establish a rhythm. And again, this could very well be military rhythm. Okay. And military authority. And there are problems here with authority because the sun is karako bhava nasha. So like in the monthly transits, the first slide I showed with the charts, we don't have a moon karako bhava nasha in this chart, but we have a sun karako bhava nasha. So sun representing authority and father in the 9th house representing authority. There are going to be problems with authority here. So this could be authority trying to establish, again, control, essentially. I mean, especially military control after going through 2 world wars. And that was really the crux, I think, of what drove the development of the computer here. Okay. Then the moon nakshatra, well, the moon is in Ashlesha, so it's strong because it's in its own sign, but you can see it's gandanta. It's about to shift from Cancer to Leo here, and that's a gandanta point. So doubly unstable because it's not only crossing constellations, but crossing changing nakshatras. So this is going to be an unstable moon, but strong. And then there's also going to be like gains through the moon. So gains through the public and also gains through emotional upset. So what drove the development here was all the, um, emotional, physical, everything losses that happened during the two world wars just before this came out. But there's also going to be like a public attention here. And that's also what's going to drive this forward to move it from a government related project to something that was, in everybody's home. I mean, I'm sitting in front of my computer now and I've got my smartphone next to me. This is part of our daily lives here. So the day lord and the hora lord are a combust Venus. Okay. So a combust Venus, this is not showing emotion. This is not showing, this is very bare bones. I mean, this is an Apple computer with the aesthetics and everything. This is very much like a, um, destabilizing emotions. You could say that as well. Okay. Because Venus and Mercury are in war again in this chart, like it is coming up, or just was and now coming up again at the end of the month. Okay. The other thing about this chart, and then the next chart I do, you'll see a similar thing, but Moon and Venus Moon seems kind of strong, but it's unstable, and Venus is uh, combust here. So there's trouble with emotions generally, but also Moon and Venus represent women. So apparently, part of the story of developing this computer, apparently there were 6 women who were very much involved with the coding and everything that happened. But when this was unveiled, they were not invited to the ceremony or the dinner celebration dinner associated with us. So they were like cut out. Okay. So their contribution was kind of buried early in history. But there's a public attention here that's unstable. Now, the other thing about this chart is that if you think about this as like just the beginning of, and then move it up to today, 2026, a lot of even though there's clearly some massive engineering ambition here and drive derived from, problems of the past and creating some sort of a defense for government or authority, there's also relationship problems. I mean, problems with the relationship. Sun is karaka bhava nasha. We have a Jupiter karaka bhava nasha in the 5th house. Jupiter represents children, and it's in the 5th house of children. So there's going to be a problem with authority and problem with children as well. And also like unstable emotions, So I think this is even pointing towards the modern version or update of this chart in terms of, parents having trouble, communicating with their kids because the kids only want to text and use these machines. And, there's concerns about whether children are developing, social skills because they're on their machines all the time, these addictive engineering machines, yeah, that were originally developed for the, military. Yeah. So, yeah, so just keep that in mind too as we go through. But Venus being combust, there's going to be a lack of emotional expression here. The birth dasha, we have Mercury and Saturn. So that's going to be the planets in parivartan exchange of houses. Mercury represents ideas. Saturn represents like physical things. And Venus is combust. So this is like a physical, calculator, mechanical calculator here. And because of the parivartana, you have Mercury and Saturn all over this chart. And Mercury and Saturn are two separationist planets. Saturn is separationist through physicality, and Mercury separationist by being in your head all the time. So you can kind of see where, like, again, if you look at it on this specific day, it's one thing, in terms of this, like, wild, unbelievable machine that can calculate really super fast, to how is this evolving now in terms of, social skills and relationships. Okay. So the current dasha, though, is Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. Okay. So Jupiter, trouble with kids. It's a karka bhava nasha. Venus and Mercury, this war is going on. So again, there's this, what does the authority, troubled authority feel versus think, head versus heart? How does the troubled authority deal with all of these, onslaughts, essentially? Okay. But also speech, emotions, and social grace, all this. Jupiter and Venus are the two compassion planets, and they're both challenged in this chart. I mean, if not completely unseen. Yeah, and how do we work that out? Yeah. So how does this chart recreate the current sky pattern? Well, Jupiter is on all the air signs. Mars and Ketu are in combination. So Mars and Ketu, so that's another, you can see coming here. Mars and Ketu are in the 7th house of partnerships. Mars and Ketu are in explosive energy. And Mars is in Punarvasu. So again, physical, military, violence potentially with an arrow. So it's with a weapon. And then Ketu is in Mula. Mula is all about the deity associated with Mula Nakshatra is the goddess of death and destruction. So this is like destroying partners, or partners that destroy, So, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty ominous chart. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to get like so, I don't know, heavy, but this is, potentially some of the energy we might be facing with, not specifically computers and weapons and stuff like that, but again, strange, unusual. That was the whole theme for the month. Creative ideas coming to the light, right? Just like the King Kong movie. I mean, they had worked on that for years, and then this like strange thing like comes into the public view, and then this kind of thing too. Like they worked on this for years and years, and then this strange thing comes to the public view. So, but anyway, there's an explosive energy. We have a Swa moon and a Shlesha. We just had that yesterday on the 1st of February. And then we have Sun, Rahu, Jupiter with a combust war, Mercury, Venus, and Aquarius. I mean, that's happening soon in the next few weeks. So the reason why this computer was developed, and we can see it in the top here, because we have Rahu, that's ambition, unusual, seeking. It's in Mrigashirsha Nakshatra, so it's a seeking energy, an ambitious seeking. Saturn and Mars are in Punarvasu, like arrows, and Saturn and Mars are like engineering, their endurance, their machines, manufacturing. Okay. So this is literally seeking a machine that has endurance as a weapon. That's also involving like calculations because Mercury's going to be up here through parivartic exchange of houses. And then Jupiter's here, so this is going to be proliferation of this, not just one machine, but it's the start of many, many machines. And there's going to be news about it. So it's like a whole press conference and press, thing about it. So this machine that was supposed to be more of a general computer, because I guess computers up to that time had like a single function, so this is a multi-function machine, was calculating military artillery firing tables. Okay. So yeah, it's pretty intense. And the first project, once this was like okayed, the first project that this computer worked on was the first creating or working on the first thermonuclear weapon and H-bomb. I mean, this is like no joke. I mean, this is very intense. So, I mean, I guess the good news, at least we don't have Saturn in the mix of Aquarius now. Because the thing is, Saturn is going to be, with this exchange here, Saturn's going to be Swa. And at least right now, in this month, Saturn is off, in Pisces. So there's still going to be some fighting going on and divisiveness going on, but at least Saturn's involved, so that is a benefit. So, okay, so let's go through. So the Lugna, we have a Gemini, Mithuna, Lugna, dual air signs. So mixed ideas, contrasting ideas. Again, calculating here. Rahu, ambition, and Mrigashirsha, seeking, or ambitious seeking. Retrograde Saturn and Mars, very strong. Punarvasu aspected by a Swa, combust, war, Mercury, and Shatabisha. So this is like also made to help leaders decide, calculate when they don't know when they're in this confusion energy of what is their heart versus their heart versus head energy. like I mean, I can't even imagine being like a head of any kind of military thing during a world war. Like, how do you even make those decisions? I don't even know. So this was like one way of potentially becoming more objective about how to make those sorts of decisions during very chaotic times. So it was almost like a way to relieve the decision making for, authorities at that time, is what I'm seeing here. Yeah. So all this together, yeah, ambitious seeking, engineering, technology, contrasting ideas, calculating data that's hard to resolve, strength, resilience, obsessive nature to all this, physical defense, manufacturing, sky machines. We're getting that kind of like in the King Kong King Kong chart. Jupiter and Mars together again, machines, sky machines, machines. I was thinking like drones. Actually, nowadays that might be like drones. That's the ambition now with computers, right? Like in terms of military defense. News, and then again, decisions and planning made from fear and anger. Because all this decision, like at the top here, right? There's some decision that's being made by authority. There's confusion going on. Mercury and Venus at war, in the ninth house of authority. So leaders not knowing what to think or feel. And then what makes the decision? Well, this like, ambitious calculating machine, going by the statistics or whatever this computer generates. But you can see Saturn is there. That's fear, doubt, skepticism, doubt. Rahu is obsessive compulsive energy. Mars is anger. It's like, how do you sort through all these like wild, thoughts and feelings to, you know, um, survive, really. So, also in this chart, we have some yogas, so some combinations here. This does look like there's some Lakshmi yoga here. Not in a classical way, because to get a Lakshmi yoga, you need a strong ninth house lord and a Lagnesha or a Venus. Now, Venus is not strong at all. But when you do the Parivartana, you get a strong ninth house lord and a strong Lagnesha, uh, first house lord. So it's an indirect way, but I think that there's some hidden, you know, uh, wealth here related to authority. Okay. Um, yeah, and that's the thing is like, how do I say? Saturn is also the lord of the eighth house of other people's money and that sort of thing. So this could be starting to get into the whole notion of selling these sorts of, developing for the United States, but then selling it and making money, or at least, uh, I say, like protecting losses of money for the government. But there is money stuff going on here for sure. There's also a Saraswati yoga. Saraswati is all about creativity. So despite all the clearly mechanical, technical things going on here, there's the creativity here. There's some imagination, of how to put these things together to make this big new machine. So there's big money here and creativity, education. But when I see this Rahu, Saturn, Mars at the top with Mercury, like if this was a person, like I'd be scared to meet them. Let's just put it that way. I mean, this is somebody who's like obsessed, like a machine, like almost like a what is it, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, like the Terminator type. Like just calculating and destructive and endurance athlete, like just yeah. And that's the thing is there's all these malefics at the top, and Mercury potentially can be a benefic, but now when it's with all these malefics, so you have basically four malefics at the top here. You do have Jupiter aspecting there, but I don't think Jupiter can save this. Um, yeah, this is a really hardcore energy here. This is like, that's the term, and I don't use that term much, but like a juggernaut, like just some, like again, Terminator type energy that you can't like overcome. Um, but objective mind of steel, again, Saturn and Mars can represent literally like material things like minerals derived by disturbed fighting authority. So yeah, so the second house lord is a Swam, Moon, and Shlesha. So public power from public attention, but that attention and feeling is unstable. So this might have been too, like the public backing this because they thought maybe this computer stuff would prevent further damage like that they experienced in the two world wars. So I get like that. But again, you can see that, again, 100 years later, almost 100 years later, or 80 years later, I guess. Yeah, it's it's the 80th anniversary this year, right? So 80 years later, how this is like, you know, evolved or devolved, you might think, into personal spaces of people, all right? And the interactions between parents and kids and people in general, right? I mean, people relying on, the internet to have any kind of relationship or date or whatever, meet people, all that kind of stuff. You can see that proliferating out into society. So, then the third house here, the third house lord is Sun. That's in Danishta. So again, a military, government, or authority aspects its own house. And the third house is like, nonverbal communication. So yeah, I mean, sending somebody an H-bomb, I guess that's one way to communicate, right? Combust war, Mercury, Venus, Shatru, unable to resolve mind, emotion issues. And then Saturn's aspecting there in Punarasu. This can literally be eliminating your troublesome neighbors. Yeah, it could be that. On high level authority, there's some courage here, though, when trouble deciding between head and heart, logic and emotion. They use this calculating machine. Then the fourth house lord is Mercury, aspected by a retrograde Mars and Punarvasi. So this is like past aggression here. Mercury's in war. I think it's combust. Yeah, it's combust. So this is like, like the haunting of world wars. And all the problems of that, and past aggression. That pushing this forward. All the destruction that happened at home and happiness, and then the fifth house lord here is combust war Venus and Shatabisha. Retrograde Karako, Nasha, Jupiter, and Chitra, aspected by Rahu. So trouble with children who might be unseen, frankly, because Venus, the lord of the fifth house, is unseen. It's combust. So over time, you will see your children less and less because of these machines, essentially. These could also be, again, female advisors that are unseen, which was specifically the case on this day. Confusion, inner turmoil, ungrounded, but ambition here. Talking heads. Again, Rahu's the head without the tail. So it's like all the, that's very much the internet, right? I mean, just kind of sucks in your mind, sucks in your brain, and you don't even like kind of disconnect you from your body a lot of the time. You don't even like realize you're sitting weird and your foot has fallen asleep, that kind of thing. So, tech talk, also potentially seeking structure. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're going to have these kids having trouble with relationships and communication and just being, because Venus, again, is unseen. It's the practical advisor, worldly advisor here. They're going to become more unstable, more ungrounded, as time goes on. Then the sixth house lord is Mars, aspected by Saturn. Structural problems and delay. Yeah, I think that's just all the issues. It took a while to get this thing up and running. Then the seventh house here, the Lord is Jupiter. Ketu's in Mula, aspected by Saturn, Mars, Mercury. I mean, physical destruction of relationships, distance, separation, technology, mechanical, also explosive. Like, this is like meant to destroy relationships, not pull people together. And we're getting that several times over. But the seventh house, like, if this was somebody's seventh house, like, I mean, their relationships are going to be not only I mean, nasty. I mean, really destructive relationships here. Yeah. So, um, then the eighth house here, eighth house lord is Saturn, aspect by the moon, exalted and exalted Mars. Yeah, so building public defense, that's the deep mindset, and kind of motivation to build this computer. The ninth house lord is Saturn aspects its own house. So fortifying authority, karako, bhava, nashaya, sun, problems with authority, Venus and Mercury and war, combust. So internal struggle with authority, aspected by Jupiter and Rahu. So some ambition uh, to maintain oneself. Issues with authority, six women hidden. Yeah, the things I mentioned before. Then the 10th house here, 10th house lord is Jupiter, aspected by Saturn. So physical defense overseas, that's true, but also loss of jobs. Yeah, because you have Saturn, aspecting from the first house to the 10th house. So this is going to be slow destruction of jobs. Which, I mean, especially right now, besides drones and stuff, it's like AI is the new behemoth, right? Everybody's scared and talking about AI, the new computer technology is going to take over the world and the jobs and all this kind of stuff. And there's probably some truth to that, frankly. So, yeah, there you can see like loss of work over time. And the daily work here is to um, end things overseas, you know. Yeah, so then the 11th, sorry, it's kind of written weird, but I just wanted to fit, that was the only way to fit all this on the slide. Then the 11th house lord is Mars, and it's aspected by a debilitated Saturn. I mean, Saturn and Punarvasi, this is like, ending, destroying groups and income both, which again, computers and, all that stuff is doing some of that, maybe doing a lot of it on both levels. And then the 12th lord here is Venus. So again, losses that are basically informing and motivating the top echelon of authority here. Yeah, so again, an intense chart, but hopefully still educational in terms of astrology and also some embodiment of the energies that we're going to be facing, in the next month or so. And again, this is like another weird idea that was worked on for a long time that was brought to the light in terms of public groups, and it's still long lasting, right? Because again, I mean, the planets in this, most of the planets in this chart, and then also the King Kong chart. I mean, all these planets in um, Aquarius, these are whatever strange ideas are coming about. I mean, they're going to be long lasting ideas for the most part. So. Yep, so there's another famous chart for you. ENIAC Day. So, if Valentine's Day isn't your jam, maybe this will be February 15th. So, okay, so we've been talking a lot about Sun and Mars, the two fire leadership planets. So, this is how they're shifting in the sky this month. So, February 6th, Sun moves into Dhanishta Nakshatra. That's that drum beat, you know, uh, military movement type of energy. So, new rhythms, but Sun and not only relates to like leadership, but energy, general energy, vitality, soul, career, health, fatherhood. So there can be some new rhythms established because again, once Sun moves into Aquarius, it's going to be with Rahu. So there are going to be like unusual patterns potentially related to these things. Then February 12th is when Sun moves into Aquarius with Rahu. And Aquarius is an enemy sign for Sun. So Sun's not going to do super great, but it will be aspecting its own sign across away in Leo. So there's going to be like revamping foundations of thoughts related to Sun-related things. February 14th, Mars enters Dhanishta. So there can be sets related to rhythms here because Mars is kind of an erratic, rebellious planet. So this could literally be percussion music. It's Mars is a physical planet and it's action planet, and Dhanishta the drum beat. But Mars is also rebellious and erratic, so this could be like disrupting rhythms here. Then February 17th is a solar eclipse in Aquarius, which we've been talking about the whole time. February 19th, Sun moves into Shatru. So medical issues. Sun relates to, health. So this could be medical issues that are hard to diagnose or heal. It could also be, on the other hand, a soul doctor, like somebody who's just exceptional at what they do in terms of healing people. And they're the one that, like people go to whatever, 10 doctors and nobody can help them. And then they end up finding somebody that has some unique perspective or whatever that really almost works some magic for them. On February 23rd, Mars enters Aquarius. So Mars is going to enter join the party here in Aquarius. So that's going to make this whole eclipse, especially the second eclipse on March 3rd, but Mars and Sun together with Rahu on the Rahu Ketu axis. I mean, that's going to be taking action in new directions with unusual ideas, potentially unrelenting fighting that could be as well, or hopefully not, but it could be. Then the 27th February, Sun crosses Rahu. So soul path veers off in a new direction. So, again, expect the unexpected. Now, again, let's not expect the worst. It's expect the unexpected. So maybe things are not growing super great, and all of a sudden they get much better, overnight. That kind of thing. So just to make sure people don't get too wigged out or glum about the whole eclipse coming up here. Okay, and then the slow-moving planets, Jupiter, Guru, Shani, Saturn, and Rahu Ketu. So February 12th, Mercury crosses Ketu, and this is where almost all of this, all the action going on with the slow-moving planets and Shatabisha Nakshatra. So again, that strange, unusual, hard-to-heal energy. So this could really kind of be like getting things tied in knots, unfortunately. Then February 16th, Jupiter has a direct aspect on Mercury. This should potentially cushion some of the changes of ideas and plans that are going on. Again, I don't think Jupiter can really protect all of this that's going on, but at least there'll be some amount of grace or charitable thoughts going on here. This could also be news flashing off here. Then February 17th, Venus crosses Rahu. Again, hidden issues revealed, so potentially in relationships, or and again, what came to mind was almost like a snake in sheep's clothing, instead of a wolf in sheep's clothing, like a snake in sheep. So this might be somebody that you thought, things are going well with, or you're getting along with, or starting to get into some kind of groove with, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, not this one. It's like you realize that they're actually a snake potentially. Now, again, not everybody. It might be the other way. It might be the other way where you're like, okay, this is somebody I don't get along with, and da 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 da, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're madly in love. It could go that way too. So, yeah. So then February 22nd, Jupiter has a direct aspect on Venus. So this should again cushion some of the changes that are coming with the relationships that are pretty obvious here. And then February 27th, Sun crosses Rahu. So, yeah, this could be like obsessive compulsive thinking and revising of things because Sun brings a lot of energy. So it's going to bring a lot of energy to all this Rahu-ness, hidden unexpected energy and shot to be shot. Things are hard to change or deal with. And then actually Saturn is not changing this month, so I keep that in mind. And then, I didn't mention, I have to put that in the slide, but when Sun crosses, I need to add a line here. So when Sun moves into Aquarius on the 12th, I believe it is, we're going to get K2 5-9 aspects. So that's going to bring more of this kind of wild, separatist, possibly explosive energy going on. So that's going to make things even more wild, for better or worse. Okay, so here's our last famous chart. This is a sun chart, and this is for when the Peace Corps was created. So on this date, which was March 1st, 1961, John F. Kennedy, the U.S. president at the time, signed an executive order creating this group here. This was done in Washington, D.C. So what was the Peace Corps? Well, the Peace Corps was basically sending American volunteers around the world to support underdeveloped countries at that time. So, as of this point in 2026, more than 240,000 volunteers have been sent abroad to 142 countries. So it was kind of interesting reading the, again, history or backstory here. So apparently the president for the United Auto Workers Association, I have no idea why him, seemed kind of random, but he was really intent on bringing this idea of sending volunteers around the world and kind of creating diplomacy through ideas rather than guns. Okay. So anyway, he did eventually get his ideas brought up to the president, and it became a thing. So again, like the two charts I've shown so far are fairly intense for different reasons. And this is also fairly intense, but you can see actually in this chart, there is a lunar eclipse going on here on the Aquarius Leo axis. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. There can be some really like wildly beneficial and happy things that come out of eclipses, but they're unusual. And this was an unusual type of diplomacy effort. So what was another thing that I talked about before? I think the UN. The UN was, I think, another one that happened that was developed around the time of an eclipse. So yeah. So anyway, let's look at this chart. So I don't have a lugna nakshatra because I don't have an exact birth time here. So I use a sun chart. Um, so the sun nakshatra is a shatabisha, again, healing. Leaders that are difficult to manage or heal. Moon nakshatra, moon is in maga. Maga is leadership energy, or nakshatra. Maga is symbolized by a throne. Okay, so um, this could be like the mind. Again, the moon is the mind and emotions of leadership. Okay. Um, and then the day lord here is Mercury. Mercury's at the top. So establishing new ideas and communication, because you can see Mercury's there with K2. This is going to be unusual shifting of ideas. Mercury's in Dhanashtan Nakshatra, the drumbeat, rhythm energy. K2 is with Sun in Shatabisha. So this is like um, leading an effort to change the long-held mental patterns of leaders, people in general. I mean, not just leaders, but the public, because the moon is involved here. The thing, though, is you can see with this 1-7 axis here, we have Mercury and Moon with Rahu, Ketu, and Sun. The two mind planets, the logical mind Mercury and the emotional mind Moon, are on the Rahu, Ketu. There's a lot of obsessive energy here. Okay, for better or worse. So, Bert Dasha was Ketu, so again, that's going to bring focus on this unusual energy. And hold on a second here. Okay, so sorry, where was I? I think I was at Birchashire, right? Yeah, K2. So, and Moon was in Maga until 22:27 p.m. So I'm sure he signed this before midnight, or not that close to midnight. So there's going to be some kind of innovative leadership, public leadership. So this was literally the volunteers were the public leaders of ideas going on here. And how does this chart recreate the current sky pattern? Well, there's a lunar eclipse. There was a lunar eclipse here. You can see they're one day out. Moon is at 8 degrees 5 minutes, and sun's in 17 degrees. I think it's 34 minutes. So, yeah, the very next day you're going to have a lunar eclipse. But you've got Sun, Moon, Mercury, Rahu, Ketu on the Aquarius Leo axis. I mean, that's a lot. And Mars in Capricorn by aspect here, and Venus is in Pisces, which Venus will be in Pisces March 1st, so just after February. But let's take a look at the chart. So we have, again, Aquarius, Kumbha rising, fixed air sign, fixed ideas, Sun and Ketu, like, separationist leaders that are hard to heal. But also, I think that's again, the leaders that we're trying to affect on a higher level with this program, the leaders of other countries. But I think this is on the ground, these unusual leaders that are volunteers leaving their home to go abroad to, help support various programs, community programs around the world. It kind of works on both levels. Uh, Yeah, so, and then Mercury, Danishta, creating a new mental rhythms, in terms of developing, thought support, communication support, mind support to heal relationships. Okay. Um, yeah, so unusual thought leaders going global, public advisors, healers, partners. So these volunteers that most of them were like new college grads and, who didn't have much life experience. And so they're essentially your on the ground grassroots ambassadors for the country, creating new patterns, developing communications, that sort of thing. So the Lugnatia here, ruling planet for the chart, is a Swa war Saturn. So instead of a war between Venus and Mercury, we've got a war here between Saturn and Jupiter. They just got out of war, I think, the day before. You can see they're very close in their degrees. And Saturn is Swa, and Saturn's going to be massively strong here. And Saturn, again, is delays, obstacles, poverty, structure, uh, that sort of thing. And Saturn is in the 12th house of losses and expenditures, but also international relations and trade. And then Saturn's in a nakshatra called Uttarashada, which is a sudden piercing victory. So there's victory in going abroad and rebuilding things, because this is all in Capricorn. This is physical rebuilding, doing a lot of activities to rebuild. Now Saturn's with Jupiter, and Jupiter again is a great benefic. Jupiter can represent charity, which I think it does here, but Jupiter's debilitated here. It is Bunga. It's brought up because Saturn is with its dispositor, its landlord here. But this is like, going to really devastated places in the world and trying to, help them improve their situations here. Um, and there are a lot of, how would I say, like obstacles to achieving, balance in these places. I mean, really, socially and politically and economically unbalanced places. And then this massive Saturn is also aspecting Venus, which is exalted in the second house. Okay. So Saturn is really putting some drag on Venus and Jupiter. But the thing is, with Venus and Jupiter on either side of the Lugna here, this is going to be a Shubh yoga. So whereas in the King Kong chart, we had Mercury and Saturn, right? Mercury and Saturn on either side. So Saturn was still strong because it was in its own sign, and that was a movie that went global, a story, a long-telling, long-lived story that went global. Here, these are potentially structures and charity that's going to be long-standing here. But in the King Kong chart, there was a pop cartridge, so there were obstacles. There was a lot that the King Kong movie had to come up against in the production of that. But here, it's almost like an open sesame kind of energy. So again, it sounded like this happened pretty quickly and had enough support to make its way through into actual manifestation here. Yeah. So let's see, what do we have here? Yeah. So success in charitable building of devastated areas worldwide. The other thing about this chart is Rahu and Ketu are in Parivartan of stars or taras. So Ketu's in a star of Rahu and Rahu's in a star of Ketu. So that means that Ketu and Rahu are going to be very strong here. So again, there's some sort of unusual program here in changing old thought and emotional patterns. Yeah. Almost like a behavioral therapy type of thing, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what this could be. Yes. So, and then let's see. So the Saturn is there, and actually on Saturn is the aspect of Mars and Ardra. So Mars again can be action, can be violence, can be initiative, can be erratic, but it's an Ardra. So Ardra is about like sadness and storms and stuff like this. So it's almost like, um, and this is in the fifth house of counseling. This is about being sad about violence. So it's a different kind of vibe than like Mars and Punarvasi is like, okay, let's go get them. Let's get our weapons and go get them. Mars and Ardra, again, this is in Mercury, which Mars was in our Punarvasu in the ENIAC day chart. This is advice about being sad about violent and military actions. Again, ideas, not guns. Um, so this adds to the kind of sadness that's going on here in the 12th house of lands that are far away that have been devastated and kind of sad and depressed. And building them back up. Um, Let's see. So with the Parivartana exchange of stars with Rahu, Ketu, and the Shubkarti, there's going to be strength, support, and resilience here for this program. And it still exists today. I don't think it's very much supported as it was. Apparently, like last year when we got a new president, they had not, it took them 6 months to secure a head for the program. And I don't think it's nearly as active as it was for funding reasons. And you can actually see in this chart that there are going to be problems with funding. Well, why is that? Well, Jupiter is the lord of the second house of assets and the 11th house of income. And it's debilitated with Saturn, a massive Saturn in the 12th house. There's going to be a huge hemorrhaging of funds, to support this program. But what's interesting to me is that I still think that there may be a Lakshmi Yoga here. Because Venus, the Lord in the ninth house, is strong. It's unstable, but it's exalted. And the Lagnatia is Saturn, is Swa. So even though there was a program, drainage of funds to create this program, I think it was actually a boon for the government to do this. That's what I'm seeing here in terms of long range overseas diplomacy and relationships. So let's see. The second house, the Lord is Jupiter, debilitated. Ganga in the 12th house. We have a Gandanta exalted Venus, um, aspected by a Swa Saturn. So practical advisors, gains through practical advisors, diplomacy, travel, hospitality, but there will be a loss of assets here. The other thing with this Venus, you can see Venus is exalted but unstable because it's just about 4 minutes away from switching into Aries. Also, the moon, you have three, how many malefics? Three malefics on the moon, which also just moved out of Gandanta, so unstable here. There were one of the controversies with this program was that there were, I think, a number of women who were sexually assaulted when they were part of this program. And I don't know the numbers or statistics, but at least at some point the view of this program became a bit negative because of that. I don't know if it was the numbers. I don't know if it was actually the numbers were higher than being at home, or I think it might have been the way that those situations were handled was not the best. I don't really know, but anyway. But see, this kind of reminds me of the Enneagram chart where Moon and Venus were compromised because again, Venus and Moon represent women, so we kind of got that energy in this chart too. So the third house lord is a bhavam Mars. So the third house is non-verbal communication. So this is one obsessive action, one project, initiative, neighborhood project after another. And establishing brotherhood. Like when you work side by side with somebody, building up their community. I mean, I don't know how upset they can be at you or stay at you. With that kind of thing. And then the fourth house lord is Venus, aspected by Jupiter. So again, past support on the ground being unstable here. Not showing so much charity, or goodwill in the past was a problem. And then also, see the fifth house lord is Mercury, Mars is there. So again, public stage related to again, non-violent activities. So actually, another controversy with this program was that it was also seen as negative because this sort of was pretty popular during the Vietnam War. At that time, people could choose to go into the Peace Corps instead of join the military, U.S. military. So it got kind of a bad connotation of a program for hippies who were draft dodgers and things like that. So So this is the non-violent way of serving and creating diplomacy. Um, So sixth house lord was Moon. His moon is aspected by an exalted Jupiter and Saturn. So, the sixth house is enemies. This is winning over old enemies here with physical support, physical public support, physical, also emotional support. Then the seventh house here, seventh house lord is a bhavam sun, aspecting its own sign, Rahu moon aspecting. So turning enemies into allies, revamping mindsets of leaders. And again, as I mentioned, there's some difficulty with women in this chart. Eighth house lord is Venus, or sorry, eighth house lord is Mercury. It's aspected by Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. So this is organizing new diplomatic actions. Yeah, healing actions potentially. Ninth house lord is Venus, aspected by an exalted Saturn. Again, I think this indirectly creates a Lakshmi yoga for the government. Longevity and international administration. There is some wealth involved here. And this is also going to improve the stature of the United States government. The 10th house lord is Mars. It's an Ardra. And again, the eighth house is Scorpio. That's deep psychology. That's a natural eighth house. And Mars is there in Ardra. So again, uh, psychology about the sadness of violence, but initiatives to transform that. Then the 11th house lord is Jupiter, aspected by Mars and Rahu. Again, massive obsessive efforts to involve, create, and initiate group activities. And again, I think this is also potentially like protest revolt involving losses. Like again, the anti-war protests that were going on, especially related to the Vietnam War. Then the 12th house here, the Lord is a Swa Saturn with Jupiter aspected by Mars. So again, there's engineering, building, long-term practical engineering efforts here. So yeah, so JFK signed this off, 240,000 volunteers, 142 countries. So there were some major budget cuts that happened in 1989, so that severely limited Peace Corps. I think it went down to about 5,000 people a year. And then during the pandemic in 2020, all the Peace Corps volunteers were called back home. And I don't know where that stands now. But you can see that this may not be sustainable for financial reasons, but clearly there are also like political reasons. Um, it can work either way. It's sort of like a lever potentially that's used. I mean, there are all kinds of diplomacy things, right? Like panda diplomacy and ping pong diplomacy and basketball diplomacy. So this was another sort of way to go about that. Also, I thought was interesting was actually President Carter, who was, I think, president in late 70s, early 80s. His mother was a Peace Corps volunteer at the age of 70. She was a nurse, and so she went abroad at the age of 70 as part of this program. Apparently had the time of her life. Said it was like one of the best experiences. And she was the oldest volunteer that went until later. I think somebody who was 75 ended up going. Um, and again, different presidents like loved it or hated it. I think President Nixon thought it was like just a was a complete waste of time and just a way for people to escape their military obligations. So it's very political, this organization. But again, I think at least an idea as a notion, it would be cool if we could do things this way all the time, but that's not how it goes, right? But again, this is another idea that was sort of percolating under the surface and brought to the light, and has long-term effects. So yeah, so there's another example, and also another example of not just ideas coming to light, but again, eclipses and current sky patterns, and how some of these energies can be embodied in you know uh, positive, negative, or just unusual ways. All right, so there you go. As always, thanks so much for stopping by and listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all of your support for my work in the channel. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology and my concepts playlist, they can be found there. For more famous charts, check out my birth chart archives 2025 video, which I'll be updating in April, so not too far off. I do offer individual birth chart readings and astrology courses, so if any of that's interesting, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info on those things. And I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. So as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, take good care. Namaste.